I once got a call from a man who was working for a sales company. He kept on trying to sell me things, even though I politely told him I wasn't interested. He could have sold his grandma if he wanted. But as you probably know, they just keep on trying and won't let you hang up. So I just hung up while he was talking. Later that night, after dinner time, I was sitting on my couch, trying to unwind after a long day of dealing with work. No TV was on, and I just enjoyed the silence. That was until my phone buzzed and lit up with an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. I asked who it was, and the person on the other end began swearing at me and calling me names. At first, I thought it was teenagers prank calling, but I remembered that voice. It was the same voice as I spoke with earlier that day. It was the salesman I hung up on earlier. Only he's not at work this time. He demanded me to buy from him the next time he was calling me because he has been threatened to be fired if he doesn't soon start selling. I just thought he was a complete idiot for calling me in private and threatened me to buy from him. Like an empty threat. And I told him that and asked him what he thought he would accomplish by threatening me over the phone, while I sort of chuckled. But that wasn't the case. He told me to look outside, and I did. I didn't know what the man looked like, but I could see someone standing right outside my house talking on the phone. He obviously had the nerve to call me in private, so why wouldn't he come to my house as well? At this point, I got a little freaked out. I had no idea what he was capable of, so I told him I was going to call the police. But he kept threatening me by saying that he would probably get inside quicker than the police would arrive. So I kept him on the phone in case he would barge in if I hung up. I went downstairs to make sure I had locked the door. After double-checking the door, I looked outside the window from my living room, and the man wasn't there. Or at least I couldn't see him. I then heard some noises coming from the front door. So I slowly approached it. It came from the keyhole. I remember bowing down to look through the keyhole, thinking that I would see some sort of metal to pick the lock. But there wasn't. The man was looking through the keyhole, which made me gasp. Naturally, I tried to reason with him, ask what the hell was going on. But he just laughed and said that I'm best of just making a purchase when he calls me again tomorrow. He then turned around and hung up and walked away. I waited a few minutes while I just kept an eye on my front yard, making sure he wasn't there. Then I called the police and told them everything, including the fact that he threatened to call again tomorrow. So, the police said they would check in with me now, but I said it was fine and it wasn't necessary. Then they told me they could come by tomorrow to eventually stay and listen to the call if he decided to call back. I said yes and went to sleep that night. I didn't sleep well that night, constantly checking the window and listening for unfamiliar sounds, but nothing further happened. The next day, the man called again, and when I declined the offer, he told me that he thought we had made a deal yesterday, and if that wasn't the case, then he wouldn't mind making a new deal with me later that night. The police were there and heard everything, so I had to officers staying at my house the whole day, waiting for the man to come. And he did come, but he wasn't expecting the police. So the man got caught and got sent to prison. I don't exactly remember what he was sentenced and what they called it, but I believe death threats were a part of it. In hindsight, this is probably the most stupid crime I have ever heard of, let alone witnessed. I knew who he was, by him letting me know it was that guy from the company. But of course, at the time it happened, it was scary as hell. When I was younger, back in the early 2000s, we had 2 phones. We had one upstairs in my parents' bedroom and another in the living room downstairs. My brother and I quickly learned that they were connected to each other, so if I were to talk with someone on one of the phones, my brother could listen to our conversation through the other phone. He could also talk, so it would be like a 3-way call. When the phone rang, it showed no caller ID or phone number, so nobody knew who was calling. My brother was 14 years old and I was 12. My brother has always been protective over me, even though I'm only 2 years younger. But since I am his little sister, he has always been protecting me. One day, my parents had to attend some kind of conversation with my brother's teachers from school. It was only parents and teachers attending this, so I was home and watching TV with my brother. The phone rang. and I was the one who answered. "Hello?" I said. There was no one on the other end, but only this long, noisy tone. I repeated myself. "Hello?" My brother looked at me and asked who it is. Then a man's voice appeared and told me that the bunny on my shirt was really cute. I asked him how he knew that, and he just started laughing. My brother could see. I looked concerned, so he ran upstairs to listen to the conversation through the other phone. I made sure the doors were locked to our house and then closed the curtains, and the guy was still laughing. I hadn't hung up the phone yet, and I was freaking out and scared. The guy asked where my parents were, and I said my dad was taking a shower. He replies by chuckling and saying, "All right, sure. Is that why you have no pants on, because you are taking a shower after?" At this point, my brother interrupted and said something along the lines of, "Listen, you creep, my dad has a gun, and when he is done taking a shower, he will use it if you try to do anything." My brother hung up the phone and ran downstairs to me and made me hang up the phone. At this point, I was so scared that I was crying. My brother comforted me and called our parents and told them about it. They told us to call the police while they rushed home. They arrived at the same time, and we told the police what had happened, and they patrolled our neighborhood for a couple days. It was seriously horrifying. This happened several years ago. I never thought something like this would happen to us by making a little mistake. But it did, and it's been haunting my dreams ever since. My parents went out for the evening, leaving me, a 17-year-old, in charge of my 12-year-old sister. They left us some cash to order a pizza for dinner. This was also back when it was more common to use the Pizza House flyer than searching for a number on the internet. But we couldn't find the flyer in our house. We usually placed it in a drawer we had in our kitchen. But since we somewhat often ordered pizza, I was certain that I could remember the number by memory. So here we were, home alone, hungry, and trying to decide what pizza we should order. After much deliberation, I grabbed my phone and dialed what I thought was our go-to pizza place. The guy on the other end picked up, and I told him we wanted to order a pizza. There was no answer, so I assumed he waited for me to tell him what pizza we wanted, so I let him know what pizza we wanted. After some time, he asked for the address, so I gave it to him, of course. He seemed a bit off, now that I think back, but at the time, I saw nothing wrong with the situation. While waiting for the pizza to arrive, we got a phone call from the place we thought were the pizza delivery driver. When I picked up, the man wanted to clarify the address, to make sure he got the correct address. So I told him our address again and hung up. A little while later, a knock echoed through the house. I figured it was the pizza guy, so I rushed to the door and my sister followed along. I only managed to unlock the door before the door swung open, greeting us with a sight of a tall and lanky man who was empty-handed. No pizza. He barged inside, pushing me aside, demanding to speak to our parents. My sister clung to me, tears welling up in her eyes, telling him our parents were out for the night. He then proceeded to yell in our face that prank calling people isn't something you do, and especially not in the nighttime. I told him we haven't prank called anyone and we were just waiting for our pizza. My sister was sobbing and I was desperately trying to make sense of the situation. It was only when he mentioned the prank calls that it hit me. We had probably dialed the wrong number. The pizza we were expecting was never coming. Instead, this stranger was in our home, scolding us for a mistake we didn't even realize we had made. So, I told him the whole situation, and he just looked angry at us and turned around and left. It didn't seem like he even believed me. He must have thought I just tried to play dumb by pretending to actually want to have called for a pizza. But in that case, why would I have given him my address? I don't get it. But the fear he instilled in us lingered. We reported the incident to the police when our parents came home, but they couldn't do much without more information.